everyone, and welcome to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I'm here with Dani Hatch, and this is our very first episode, so welcome. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things that are Utah-related in the film world, about Utah productions, movies and stories that are just set in Utah, and of course, just movies that you can watch in Utah that are produced elsewhere. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to cover, and maybe we should start off by telling a little bit about ourselves. Dan, you want to
sure
start?
thing. So excited to finally get around to doing this. So thank you so much, Josh. My name's Dani Hatch. I am a film student at Weber State. I grew up in Utah, in Vernal, so middle of nowhere. But I always loved watching movies as a kid. I'm a big Spielberg fan. I love those classic films so much. And now I'm studying, hoping to become a producer and help other creative, film-minded people realize their dreams. But for now, I'm utilizing one of the very few talents I possess, which is just talking about movies incessantly. So really excited to be here.
So modest. So one of many talents, I must say, from what I've observed so far. But no, my name is Josh Terry. I have spent the better part of the last decade doing some kind of a film review, film criticism work. I spent 3.5 years on KJAZ doing the KJAZ movie show. I spent about 7 years writing weekly reviews for the Deseret News. Even did movie reviews back in grad school, back at Utah State up in Logan. So it's been a lot of stuff here and there, and done a little bit of production and other kind of random things. But just kind of like you said, Dani, I've always loved movies, always been drawn to them, and so the media has been a part of my life for my whole life, and so it's gonna be kind of fun to take on a new challenge, right? So I've done a little bit of TV, a lot of writing, and so now let's see where this podcast thing goes that seems so trendy with the young folks these days.
With my generation.
with your generation, right? Yeah. So it may become a theme as we go along that we're coming from separate generations, and I guess I'm officially the old man of the production. So that'll be fun. But we got a lot of different things we're going to do here. We're going to be talking about new movies that have come out. We're going to be reviewing, of course, kind of the new exciting releases and not so exciting releases. And but then we'll also be doing a lot of focus on what's going on in Utah as far as productions or certainly things that are Utah related. And we're going to be bringing people in to do some interviews and to go over news and different interesting things. And of course, we'll just be kind of talking about some of our favorite stuff along the way too. It's not going to be all immediate as far as the news cycle. But speaking of the news, let's go ahead and jump in, because I think we got a couple things of interest to talk about that are happening.
Yeah,
right
we've
now,
got a
Dani.
lot of exciting things going on, especially now. Utah production is hitting this all-time high with, I think it's like 28 current productions, so many releases. So it's really exciting to see. One thing that we'll be seeing by the time this episode airs is that The Chosen Season 2's final episode will be premiering, and the whole story of The Chosen Season 2 is very interesting from a production standpoint and how it ended up coming here to Utah. Of course, there's the Jerusalem set in Goshen, and the director, Dallas Jenkins, really wanted to film Season 2 there, but since it's a set created by the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, it's typically only used for church purposes, but they got approval from the president of the church, and they began filming there. So it's really exciting to see this collaboration of different faiths, which is what The Chosen is. So many people of different faiths have come together as actors and crew members, all showing their love for these Bible stories, right? So I think it's kind of cool that Utah has kind of put in a little bit of their resources to kind of help in that purpose. And you said that you haven't seen any of The Chosen yet, right?
Oh, you outed me right off the beginning.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not as caught up
it's
either,
fine.
so I can't really blame you for it.
No, it's I have been hearing quite a bit about it for a little while now, and just it just hasn't made it to the top of the to-do list, I guess. But no, and I guess that's one of the things I've heard is that it's a really great quality production. that the interpretation has been really engaging and interesting, and so it's definitely on the list. But I mean, obviously, it was more important for me to go see Fast and Furious 9 last night. So,
You need
so
Jesus
yeah,
now.
we all have our priorities, right? So yeah, but no, that one we'll be spending some more time
Yeah.
talking about that, I'm sure, in the the episodes to come. But as of now, it's just something I've been hearing about and hearing
Yeah.
good things.
No, we'll definitely want to cover it more. At the time of recording here, of course, not everything is out yet, so hopefully we'll have some time to just watch everything and give a good review on it because it is a very incredible story from, the content that it provides and also just the background logistically of what they're doing with it. So we'll definitely come back to that one.
Right.
In other news of what's being filmed in Utah, we have Scenes from the Glittering World, which is a documentary by Jared Jenkins about the rural community called Navajo Mountain down by the Arizona-Utah border. It follows three high schoolers who go to Navajo Mountain High School. Jenkins was really intrigued by this story of these kids in a small town on a robotics team, and he ended up revealing this whole story about a community, about the beauty and the struggles of living in this area. And it's been really highly reviewed. I saw some clips, and the scenery alone, the cinematography is spectacular. It's very, very beautiful. And not only did they utilize the setting, it looks like they really utilized the people there. There was a lot of charm, a lot of humor, and you can tell it's going to be a very emotionally gripping film.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting to me. I've developed kind of a connection to that area over the last few years because I do a lot of photography, and for the last few years, usually around spring break time in March, I head down to Monument Valley to do some shooting. And in the course, I've been able to kind of get familiar with the area. And the first time I went down there, I actually took a tour. And because of the time of the year, I wound up like the only person on the tour, and so it was just me and the tour guide for 4 hours. And of course, he was a local resident on the reservation, and so we just talked for like 4 hours. And in addition to seeing all this cool stuff, he was telling me all about what his life was like, and he had because he had kids, and some of them were still on their reservation, some of them had already moved to other cities and were pursuing jobs. I think he had a daughter who was a nurse, and different things like that. And so I bet this is you know just like you say, I think that there's going to be some really fascinating material, and I fully expect it to look gorgeous because that area is just amazing.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's really going to deliver, and it seems like it's in high demand. I was checking it out last night, and it's sold out for the entire week. So even though the premiere is going to end by the time this episode's coming out, like no one else is going to be able to see it because the tickets are all sold out, which is a wonderful problem to have. So I really hope that we're going to
Sure, yeah.
see more of it, more releases, maybe come to some theaters, so we can show that support for this project.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be really interesting to see.
I think it was really interesting. What really struck me is, so growing up in Vernal, we had a reservation, a Ute reservation close by. I went to school with some kids who lived on the reservation, and I remember this one time there was this beauty pageant sort of thing that they did, and then it was held at the school, and they did talents and answering questions and the whole shebang. The outfits were incredible, and the dancing was really, really neat. The problem that I had with it is just that it was hosted at the school, but like near the end of the day or like after hours or something. So most kids didn't stay for it, and I
Hmm.
think we do need more opportunities to really see and appreciate that culture because there's so much of it here in Utah, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Kind of like I was saying, it's just been over the last few years that I've spent a lot of time kind of in that corner. But as you say, there's reservations up by Vernal where
Hmm.
you're at, and it's a very big part of Utah and its kind of history and culture. And I think this is going to be this is going to be a really great way to explore some of that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So, keeping on the lookout for scenes from the glittering world. Hopefully, it'll be a little more accessible to all of us.
Yeah, right. It won't only be shown
Oh
after
my
hours,
gosh,
is what you're saying.
exactly, exactly.
Nice, nice.
Now, this last bit of news that I have is a little more on the funny side. I think it's hilarious. So, like I said, there are 20 current productions and 7 new recently announced, and one of which is Netflix's Real Housewives of the North Pole, which is this holiday comedy movie. Oh man, I think it's hilarious that they want to create this and that they want to create it here. But timing wise, we just had the release last year of Real
Right.
Housewives of Salt Lake City, which I saw
Exactly.
just the
Yeah.
trailer of it, and oh my goodness, like it's what you would expect. You know, it's just you know
Oh yeah.
what I mean.
No surprises at all.
But
Right.
also seeing the scenery of like the mountains and temples and whatever, like those familiar things, but then also seeing that typical trash reality show material. It was just a weird
Yeah.
combination, but maybe there was some kind of fascination with it that people really enjoyed, and because of that, we're also gonna get Real Housewives of the North Pole up here.
Yeah, and well, there's a much better chance of me watching the
Oh,
latter,
absolutely.
because the former, yeah, I don't know. I guess the diplomatic thing to say would be to each his own, but I really, when it comes to reality television, this stuff, even if it wasn't a local production, about Salt Lake and all that kind of thing, I still, oh my goodness. But it's interesting because I guess my one hesitation with the North Pole project, and this is kind of a just a an
Yeah.
aside here, but my concern is that it's too spot on. I don't want it to be too close to what a real reality television production would
Mm.
look and feel like, because I wouldn't want to watch it. So for example, I've been rewatching 30 Rock on Hulu. It's just kind of one of my TV shows I've just been rotating through while eating food during the day. And for hours and hours, that's like all I do is eat food and watch Hulu. But anyway, so I'm just going through in season 5, and it's season 5 is when Tracy's wife gets her own reality show, and then there's one episode of the show that is presented as the reality show, like as his wife's show. What's really kind of fascinating about it is that it's so spot on. Like, it's a perfect reproduction of the reality TV show style. And it's, of course, it's 30 Rock, and it's, brilliant writing. But I hate the episode
It feels too
because I
much
hate
like it. Yeah.
reality television. It's too, yeah, it's like this feels like the real thing, and it's annoying enough that I just don't want to watch it, So it's almost like too good for its own good,
Yeah.
and or too accurate for its own good. I actually ran into this years ago with a John Cleese bit. It wasn't Monty Python, but it was kind of spun off of that. John Cleese did this short series of sketches that together were called How to Irritate People, and they were these. It was actually kind of an early version of kind of the awkward humor that became more popular, in recent, maybe your generation would be familiar with, and and but what was weird about it was that they were these little vignettes about people being annoying, and they were just so annoying that I didn't like
Yeah.
watching them because they were so effective, they were so spot on. And it's kind of interesting how something can be accurate, but its accuracy undercuts it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'd be, and I don't know. That was kind of a
No, no,
long
I
tangent.
think it's an interesting point. It kind of needs to have a little bit of a self-awareness and something that it's grounded in, so it's not too immersed in the reality show look. I had this a conversation that this is reminding me of with my husband after we watched Jojo Rabbit, and how it was
Ah,
such effective satire because there are moments where it kind of pulls you out of the propaganda and it pulls you out of all this silliness, and it has moments of
Yeah.
grounding you in reality and, hey, this is the message we're trying to say. And my husband brought up this pamphlet called A Modest Proposal that came out years ago that was saying, hey, the way to fix the poverty issue is that the poor people should sell their children to the rich people for them to eat the children. So, there are less mouths to feed, the poor can get money and stuff like
Mm,
that. So it was obviously satire, but near the end it says, well,
yeah.
we could just have the rich help the poor and, do all these other things, but that's not going to happen. But it has this moment where it pulls back, says the actual message, and so you can understand it a little bit better and know where it's coming from. And so I see that
Right.
with this issue that you're kind of worried about with the North Pole, is that, if it doesn't have that moment of pulling back and maybe grounding ourselves in actual reality, it's
Right.
going to be
Right.
just too unwatchable.
Yeah. No, and I think that's an interesting comment, right? Because, there's the question of how explicit does it need
Hmm.
to be, and should people be able to kind of pick up on it on
Yeah.
their own, or is it, if it's because, like in these examples we're talking about here, if it's so spot on and doesn't leave that
Hmm.
area, it's just hard
Yep.
to watch. And it could be to this that I really just have a big problem with
Hey,
reality
rightly
television.
so, rightly
At least
so.
that branch of
Yeah.
it, right? Because there are so many different kind of subgenres now, but and somehow it's still here after all these years.
Oh, goodness. Well, speaking of still here after all
But
these years, I'm really excited to hear about your experience with
there,
Black Widow and all that Marvel stuff.
now that's a segue. That's a segue. Very nicely done. Very nicely done. No, I was just kind of thinking, there's going to be this category of movies that I don't know if we put an asterisk by it or if we just kind of think about them as this special little
Mm.
fraternity. All the movies, the big ones that we were thinking we were going to see last
Yeah.
year and that all got pushed back to this year. There's going to be, at least for me, I think I'm always going to have this association with, oh yeah, that was one of the movies that I thought I was going to see in the spring of
Hmm.
2020 and didn't see until the summer of 2021, because we've already got like Quiet Place 2 was literally, we had a screening scheduled for that right when the pandemic happened, and so that was
Hmm.
canceled. We didn't have a Black Widow screening scheduled, but that was
It was coming
definitely,
up.
that was
Yeah.
probably like, yeah, oh yeah, I want to say, I haven't confirmed it, but I think that originally it was supposed to be like an April 2020 release. And of course, now we're July 2021, and it's finally here, which, I don't know if that puts any additional pressure on it because, I don't know that it's had that much of a big buildup. But since we've been kind of waiting this long to see it, and then of course, I think it also is distinctive because it's how many now? I mean, because obviously we've had all of the TV
Hmm.
series, but I think this is just the second movie that's come out since Endgame, right? I mean, because there was the Spider-Man
Yeah.
Far From Home, but I think this is the the next one,
I
and
think you're
so
right. Yeah, that sounds about
kind of
right.
yeah. So the question of what's going to what's the Marvel universe going to look like on the big screen
Hmm.
post Endgame? This is one of those movies, and of course, Black Widow itself, I think, has always kind of had a bit of a build up because there's been this feeling like, hey, it's about time we give Scarlett Johansson her own movie because the Black Widow character is so great and has always been kind of treated as a kind of a ancillary character, kind of secondary to some of the other
Hmm.
Avengers, and so altogether, there's just a lot of context and background for this movie. And so, with that in mind, I think it's pretty good. I really, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't rank it as one of my favorite Marvel movies, but I would certainly say that it's
Yeah.
rewatchable, and I don't think people are going to be disappointed by it. It didn't blow me away. I'm just kind of giving like the
Hmm.
big picture take before I even really get into the substance of it. But I mean, it's got some really great things going for it. Primarily for me was the cast. I thought the cast was awesome. So this movie essentially, it's got a little bit of an origin story element to it, but it's mostly taking place in between Civil War and Infinity War. So after the Sokovia Accords are passed, and there's the schism between Team Cap and Team Iron Man and all that. Everybody kind of goes their separate ways, and as this film opens, at least in its kind of its core narrative, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, is on the run and trying to evade capture, and in the process reconnects with some of the people that she ran with in the old days, back when she was getting red on her ledger, as the expression was going. And of course, before this, there's a little bit of a flashback that shows her early childhood and how she was set up with a family, but they were basically a family of spies, and even her and her little sister, even though they weren't really actively operatives, they were still posing as something they weren't. And I won't give too many
It's all good.
details away from that because it's kind of a fun thing to see, to kind of unpack where she's coming from. But basically, it's no spoiler to reveal that this core family is the main characters in this movie, because if you've seen any of the trailers at all, they've given a lot of that away. So she's, her spy parents, I guess, if you put it that way. David Harbour plays this basically this Soviet superhero who was kind of pushed into this undercover role. I think he was the Red Guardian, I think is his character name. Rachel Weisz is the scientist, and she's the mom. And then now I apologize if I pronounce this wrong, but it's Florence Pugh. She plays her Black Widow's younger sister, and of course, so we see them a little bit in kind of like this, back in the 90s flashback, but then they are brought together through a sequence of events that take place in modern times, contemporary times, and basically have to chase down the man who was behind the entire Black Widow spy network. Because even though Black Widow is Black Widow, that's basically a term for all of the female spies that are recruited as children and go through all of the training and all of the awful things, and the psychological influencing and different stuff. And so they're the good guys trying to chase down. Ray Winstone he's the guy who was heading up the program. So it's kind of in a way, there's a little bit of Bourne Identity to it, I
Oh,
guess you could say.
interesting.
Because Scarlett Johansson's character, and we've kind of known this over the years, is that she was part of this, Soviet spy network that was basically exploiting, children and stuff, and it goes into that, and it's I mean, it's never super graphic. It's a pretty straight up PG-13 action movie, but it's definitely got some darker tones to it, and it's cool. Like I enjoyed it. It didn't. I guess the way that I would put it is that the third act didn't really blow me away, and maybe it's just because there was no big blue sky beam and the world about to end type of scenario, which hopefully that's not giving it away. I mean, it's actually kind of nicer to have things a little more closer to a little more
Yeah.
grounded, but it was good, but I don't know that I would again put it up there with the best of the Marvel movies. Certainly not with kind of like the best Avengers movies, but I would rank it as one of the better standalone solo movies, if that's a good context for it. Some kind of a three and a half stars out of four type thing. But again, the thing I think I enjoyed the most was the
Hmm.
cast.
Well, it looked like a
Florence,
fabulous
I
cast,
remember,
just
yeah,
seeing any behind the scenes stuff, clips, and everything. Like, that's what I'm
right.
really excited to see. Is
Oh yeah, and their interaction, I really do think is kind of the strongest because, like I said, the I think that the story and the plot is
yeah.
just fine. It's good. It's not gonna blow you away. There's some cool action to it, but it's not like a wall to wall action
Hmm.
type thing. It's more that it's enjoyable to see these actors playing these roles and interacting with each other. Because if you're a fan of Stranger Things, you got David Harbour. Florence Pugh was in the recent Little Women, and she was in Midsummer, which I didn't see, but I know that she was in that, as well as Fighting with My Family. She was in, and so she's
Yeah.
really fun, and you almost get the sense that, given what happened in later films, that she could be the next Black Widow. If that's, and I don't know, not having read the comic books, I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe that's what everybody already knows, and I'm just late to the boat, but
That's
late to the
so
party.
interesting. There's a lot there. I can see that whole setup thing because I think, Black Widow's death was just, it leaves this gaping hole, and that's why we were all excited for this movie to come out, right? Because we missed her so much, and I think
Yeah,
incorporating the younger sister like that would be kind of an interesting thing. So, and knowing what Disney does with Marvel, like lots of setups all the time, so that might be something to look out for.
yeah, oh yeah. Right, and they continue to do that, like without going into it too much. I mean, there are after
Of
credit
course.
scenes, and there's definitely a nod towards future
Good
productions and
deal.
stuff. But yeah, no, it's I mean, if you've been waiting breathlessly for the last year and a half, I don't know that it's going to fulfill all of your wildest
Yeah.
hopes and dreams, but I definitely think it's worth it, worth
It's
seeing.
really
So
a huge relief for me to hear you say that all about it because I think there's so much working against it, which is like, that buildup of the hype. And then also going
yeah,
back in
right,
time, I wasn't sure how far back. Like, I thought this was an origin story and that we were going, back to the start, maybe before Iron Man or something like that. But kind of like
yeah,
going into this in between phase, that's really interesting. But then also, what was
yeah.
kind of tricky with the Spider-Man movie after Endgame is here was this huge big event, and of course you have to scale down from there. How do you
Yeah.
scale down but like have it exciting enough where it doesn't feel like a huge letdown? So considering that it had all this
Hmm.
going against it, it sounds like it performed really well.
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, I'm just one voice, and I haven't really spent a lot of time, getting feedback from other people, but I was perfectly fine with it. I enjoyed it. I mean, there are certain elements with a movie like this and a movie from this genre that are going to be limiting in terms of tension and stuff. I mean, knowing when this is taking place and already knowing what's going to happen in the future,
Hmm.
but of course, there's never really any question like, is this superhero going to die? Well, of course not, because
It's
they're a
superhero movie.
superhero,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so it's for me, it's always going to be kind of kept at a certain level in terms of how good the movie can really be. But no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. I think that Scarlett Johansson's character has been certainly one of the more interesting and compelling ones
Mm.
over the years, as we've kind of just gotten bits and pieces of the backstory and the background, and again with the great cast, and Kate Shortland is the director and has done a good job, and it's too bad that we won't see, I presumably won't see a lot of Scarlett Johansson Black Widow sequels, but it does seem like it's set up that there could be some kind of a continuation of the Black Widow
Mm.
narrative. So, but speaking of continuations
Nice.
and continuation and continuation and
Oh yeah.
continuation, a little while ago, I didn't finally see it till last night. I had a conflict during the press screening, but I have now seen the ninth movie in the Fast and Furious
Ooh,
franchise.
congratulations. You
F
survived.
F9, thank you. It feels like an accomplishment. It's no, you know I still can't decide whether they need to stop making these movies or whether they need to keep making them for 50 years. It's because there's such a weird balance between how fun and crazy and over the top
Mm.
they are and how ridiculous and stupid and bad they are. And it's like you change your mind from scene to scene
Yep.
because I mean the credit I can give them, and maybe I'll say this before I get into the new movie itself too much, but like I think of them, I tend to think of this franchise in comparison to the Michael Bay Transformers movies because they're both just absurd, right? And consciously ridiculous. And and of course the before and after of the Fast and Furious movies is just completely hilarious. If you when I first was introduced to these movies, I started reviewing regularly right before the sixth one came out, and I had never seen any of the others. So I went back and I watched the first one because I thought, oh, okay, I at least want to have an idea of who these characters are before I go see the sixth movie in the series, right? And just when you consider, okay, what has happened in between the first movie
How
and the
did we get
sixth?
here?
Yeah, like this first movie is about some street racers and an undercover cop, and the sixth movie, they're like international super spy team, Mission Impossible, like what? And and my poor friend who went and saw this with me last night, he hadn't seen any of them until the ninth. Like he saw like me, he went and watched the first one, and then he watched the ninth was the next one, which is just an even more tremendous gap. And it's so crazy, but where I think the thing that redeems it is that with the Fast and Furious movies, I feel like I'm in on the joke. Like they're not trying to do anything. They're not trying to get away with
No.
anything. They know that this is over the top and goofy and silly and crazy and ridiculous. And so it's just kind of we're just going to have fun and just come up with the craziest ideas possible. Like I literally think that they have these brainstorming sessions in the writers' room where they're just trying to come up with the craziest way possible to like what's an even more absurd way to have Vin Diesel wreck a car and not die?
Right.
And like he doesn't even have airbags going off, and he's still walking away from these things without a scratch. But but again, with the Transformers movies, I don't feel like I'm in on the joke. I feel like I'm being exploited.
Yeah. There's nothing to laugh at there. It's just, why am I doing this?
Yeah,
I mean, there's plenty to laugh
right.
at, but you're mostly just laughing at yourself for being the fool sitting in the theater. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Because those feel so much more cynical to me, where there's this sense like, well, we know that the audience likes particular things,
Mm.
explosions and scantily clad women and fart jokes and slow panning shots of people standing up at a low angle out of a car, right? And so we're going to give you 3 hours of those things in a loop,
Yeah.
right? And that's basically what those movies are. And it's just chaos and it's excessive and there's nothing fun
Hmm.
about it. Whereas the Fast and Furious movies are fun.
Yeah.
And so F9 is fun and it's stupid and it's absurd and ridiculous, but it's right on par with what you've come to expect over at least the last four of these movies because it really did. I mean, how many of them have you seen?
I saw one of them, I think, and I
Is
don't
that all?
remember it very well. I don't even know which one it was. Like, I had a friend who told me,
I'd ask you to describe it, but it might not
yeah,
narrow it down.
I don't remember a single thing from it. I know that I did watch it because I had this friend who was super into this series, kind of for the same reasons you're saying. It's fun, it's exciting. There is an appeal to it. It's ridiculous,
Hmm.
There is an audience for it, a valid audience for it. And I was wanting to show her some movies that I love, so I think I brought out like Braveheart, and maybe we watched some Bourne movies or something, and we
Uh-huh.
watched hers, and I was definitely biased towards the movies that I brought. So yeah, I don't follow it very well. I've been on the ride at Universal Studios, and that's
Yeah.
most of my exposure there. And I feel like that experience enough is, oh hey, Vin Diesel is the size of the helicopter and he's bringing it down. Like just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know what? I'm thinking here with what you're saying with the whole Transformers connection that maybe, I mean, it's totally like that still, but maybe what makes it so good is it's
Hmm.
kind of in a way sort of like what Mission Impossible is doing, where Mission Impossible at least still has a story and characters we care about and stuff like that. Sorry if you do care about the
Yeah.
characters in Fast and Furious. I haven't seen any of the movies. I'm not trying to offend you. Um, but the thing that I'm always interested in with the Mission Impossible movies is what is the big stunt? There's this is the movie with this
Yeah.
stunt.
Right.
And
Right.
maybe this is more like a movie that's a technical hurrah, where they're doing these
Uh-huh.
spectacular effects. I mean, spectacle maybe is a little bit up for debate, but something that, wow, this has never been done before. How are we going to shoot this, and what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
Let's go for
There's
it.
there is definitely, yeah, there's definitely a sense that they're trying to up the ante each
Yeah.
time. To the point with this movie, and again, I mean this happens late enough in the film that I don't really want to go into detail because I do think it's worth experiencing in real time. But they go someplace they have not gone before, and there's kind of this, you're simultaneously stunned and rolling your eyes, and it kind of leaves you going, okay, well, I don't know where they go from here, but if they put another one of these out, I guess I'm gonna be watching it. It's and it's just such a strange combination of of
Yeah.
elements, right? Because it does have this Mission Impossible team super spy element that's basically been in place since about the fifth movie, I would say. But then there's also this really strong family theme, and there's kind of like this moral, bringing people together from different backgrounds, and but we're all family because we care about each other, and this kind of thing, and there's this loyalty and this kind of stuff. And then there's muscle cars, right? Because it's I was just thinking about this last night as I was watching F9, which I guess for the sake of, recapping the plot is that, the team has to get together to fight off or to recover. Well, actually, it's pretty much the same as like most of them, where you have there's some kind of you know magic tech that's going to destroy the world unless Vin Diesel and his Dominic Toretto and his team are able to get it first. And it always brings back characters from previous movies, and and introduces new characters that are going to be part of the team moving forward. And it's just kind of this chaotic thing, but even though it's this super spy international intrigue, you know Mission Impossible type thing, there's this consistent thread of racing cars. And so even if you're on this obscure Central American island racing down and trying to get away from helicopters, you're doing it in a souped up Mustang or some kind of a souped up Chevy Charger. And it's so absurd that, like, okay, well, no, this would never play out this way, but because this series has its roots in fast cars, cars have to be a part of it somehow. And it's just kind of this cheeky, absurd thing that is just nuts, just really, really nuts. But because we do need to move on, let's talk about something you saw and that I have so far refused to see.
Sounds good. Well, I recently got to watch In the Heights, which is a film adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway musical that came out in 2008. I thought it was this original musical, but apparently it had these Broadway roots, which I think really helped it in an industry that I'm having a hard time with movie musicals lately, but this one was amazing. I loved it so much. And Josh, you and I have talked before about how it's hard to review a movie that you know isn't for you. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah, right,
obviously you're not
right.
the target audience, right? But for this one, it's hard for me to review because I feel like it's so,
Because you
yeah,
are the
it's
target
so
audience.
perfect for me. I can't be unbiased.
You're so
I am.
blinded
I really
by.
am. Oh, but it's so amazing, and I just had this wonderful experience going, and yeah, it has this great ensemble cast. They're from they have all these different Latin America roots, and they come together as this one community in Washington Heights, and they each have their own little sueñitos, as they're called, the little dreams, and you really care about them. You care about these goals that they have and their discovery, while also just admiring this unity they have. And one bias that I have towards this, in favor of this, I guess, is that I really care about Hispanic communities in the United States. I spent 5 months in Nicaragua, and it was a wild adventure. And I enjoyed
Yeah,
some things, it was, this obvious culture shock. And I was evacuated from there because there was a lot of protesting, violent protesting going on. I was serving a church service mission in Nicaragua, and then I got moved to Provo, and I got to
yeah.
see the Hispanic communities here in Utah from this different lens now that I had spent time in Central America, coming here and being all like, oh, you know what?
Uh-huh.
I know where these people have come from, but I know why they want to be here now. And I got to see
Yeah.
that so much with this movie, and it just, like, it was pulling on my heart for those people that I had met. And it's like, oh man, I know exactly what this is like, or oh, this shop, or oh, these kind of little phrases. Like, it felt so, I don't know, perfect for me because of those experiences I had, you know?
Yeah, no, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think when you have, and maybe that's kind of, one of the challenges of filmmaking is making connections with people who don't have the background as well as, being true to those who are familiar with the
Mm-hmm.
subject matter, but what's interesting to me that you mentioned was that you've had kind of a problem with a lot of recent Hollywood
Yeah,
musicals.
I
So
definitely want to
so
circle back to that.
yeah, no, and because I follow exactly what you're saying. I think that, if you're connecting to the people in a movie and to the culture and to kind of the atmosphere, that goes a long way. I mean, there are definitely movies that I've appreciated a lot more because I've had more of a connection and more of kind of
Yeah.
my own history and background with the areas and the neighborhoods, that are being portrayed. But what is it, I guess, first that you've struggled with recent musicals, and how does this one succeed in spite of that
Oof.
trend?
Well, um, I have to go back to the beginning. When I was a wee lass, and I grew up with all sorts of movie musicals. I watched Sound of Music. Newsies was one of my favorites and still is one of my favorite movie musicals of all time. I loved Oliver. There's just, so many of these classic movies, and I think it's so fundamental to Hollywood. And I was thinking about this. A movie that I think shows this very well about how rooted musical theater is in movies is Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers, where there are kind of these
Okay.
scenes showing this musical that they're filming, and it shows that when it's a musical movie, this is when everyone brings in their A game. Like the actors are super talented. Like they can literally fly in the air, as the movie shows. They're perfect.
Uh-huh.
They can sing, they can dance, and then the directors, they have to capture it all. And the writing, you need to have, beautiful lyrics, and the songs have to be catchy and something you can dance to and you want to sing along to. So I think with Hollywood movie musicals, it's where, everyone is working so hard to create this, perfect top notch material to create this complete show, right? And
Uh-huh.
that's why I've loved them growing up. They're so high quality, I think. And lately, I've I've noticed that there's kind of this disconnect sort of between these different departments. So I think it kind of for me started with La La Land, which has this amazing story, great actors, but the music is kind of forgettable. You know, like I didn't see
Hmm.
it as a great musical. I thought it was a great movie. And then we got the reverse with The Greatest Showman, which I love the soundtrack. I still listen to it all the time. But what was the story beyond just this conglomeration of music videos? There was no story, there was no development. It was really lacking.
I mean, other than misrepresenting
Oh,
P.T. Barnum as some hero,
well, that too.
some champion of the.
It's problematic as well. But even like, let's say we switched him out with some other character, and it wasn't a historical movie. Like, what is it?
Uh-huh.
You know, it's great
Yeah.
songs. It's just a whole bunch of music videos.
And then there was
Oh, are we
Cats.
gonna go into Cats?
Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we
Which
should try to
no,
stay
but
more
Cats is a great
focused.
example because here is a movie that is a Broadway musical. It is adapted from it, and I watched this interesting video about it. Shout out to YouTube channel Sideways, which makes me feel like I'm a musical expert now. He's brilliant when it comes to all things music and movies.
Uh-huh.
But he talked about how the movie, the changes that they made took away the whole point of the musical. And I thought that was very, very interesting. So check that out if you want to know more about it. But,
So there is a point to that
there
musical, is
there
what
is
you're
a
saying.
point to it. I'll briefly explain it. Typically, a protagonist has this I want song, and they have this goal, right? And then
Hmm.
the other characters, typically antagonists, will have these, all about me songs. So Cats kind of reverse that, where all the characters have these here I am songs, but then it's not until memory when we have an I want song. And it's like that's when we have our protagonist. So they kind of flipped the script there, which was kind of brilliant. And there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
interesting stuff done with the music. It is very well written. It's absurd, but there's a reason there's an audience for it, right? Now, with the movie, they made changes where memory doesn't serve that purpose anymore, and we have a different protagonist, and you're totally defeating that artistic goal of the movie. So, yeah,
Okay.
it. So I guess what I'm seeing overall with all these movies is that they're missing things, right? They're not fully investing in the story, or they're not fully investing in the music. They're missing the whole point altogether. But this movie just
Hmm.
nailed every aspect, but not like Greatest Showman, where it's like, yeah, that was high quality all across the board, but it was all interwoven. There was one song in particular where this character singing about her childhood and these pressures she feels now, and we cut over to this little girl who's dancing this dance that kind of the choreography kind of matches what she's saying, not exactly, but you can it's so well connected to what's being sung that these different elements are becoming greater than the sum of its parts. So it just all together,
Hmm.
it's this beautiful story, and it pulls you in. And again, I'm biased towards it, but like just looking at it from an objective standpoint, with the cinematography, with the choreography, the costumes, the acting, the lyrics, it's all just very, very well done. And I really, really enjoyed watching it. It is very long. It does feel like, you're going in for a Broadway musical. It actually didn't feel that way. The pacing was really, really quick. But I went in there at like 12:30. Then, we had the trailers and everything. The movie began, and we left at like 3:30. So it's like two and a half
Oh wow.
hours, about 3 hours long. It's pretty long. It doesn't feel it, but your day will be
Yeah.
gone before you know it. But I think it's worth it. I
Good to
do think
know.
it's a beautiful film.
Yeah. So especially for fans of musicals, you feel like this
Absolutely.
is this is going to be one that's going to be more
Yeah.
satisfying than for some
Yeah.
previous efforts. And no, but that makes sense. I mean, I think that when you're talking about a genre like this, you almost kind of have to kind of see it for its different parts, right?
Exactly.
Because it's the music is such a key part but it's something that can be kind of extracted and looked at separately from the story. And if those parts aren't coherent, it's going to be, because that's what you described, is that it seemed like it's kind of an either or
Yeah.
situation where either the music was good and the story was lame, or the music was forgettable and the story was good, and this, you're saying In the Heights brings that
Yeah.
together. So now I have not seen In the Heights, but interestingly enough, I did see a documentary that is remarkably similar in a lot of ways, because it is also set in New York during the summer of 1969, and it's a music documentary about the Harlem Cultural Festival. Again, through the summer of 1969. It's called Summer of Soul. It was filmed, 50 years ago, and then the footage was just kind of put on the shelf and forgotten about for decades. And it's kind of one of these things where, I think the original producer just couldn't really find either a distributor or a network to broadcast it, or whatever it was. And so the footage was just kind of archived. And Questlove, the drummer for the Roots, who's the Jimmy Fallon's band on the Tonight Show, was able to get a hold of it and turned it into a documentary, which is remarkable when you consider who actually performed at the Harlem Cultural Festival in the summer of 1969, because you've got everybody from Stevie Wonder to B.B. King to Nina Simone to Sly and the Family Stone and all these other. I mean, it's just really incredible. If you have any kind of appreciation for late 1960s, early 1970s soul and R&B and funk music, and even like gospel music, this is just really amazing to see. It reminds me a lot of a couple of years ago, they put out kind of a similar production of a performance by Aretha Franklin with I think this was the Southern California Choir, called Amazing Grace. And it was turned into an album that I actually got years ago, because I'm a big Aretha Franklin fan. And so this Summer of Soul is, I mean, on the one level, it's just this series of incredible live music performances by just some of the best, again, R&B and soul artists of all time. And if Questlove had just sequenced some of the highlights of these performances and just put it out, it still would be fantastic to see. What's really interesting, though, is the context of the time, because this was in the about a year after Martin Luther King had been assassinated, and Robert F. Kennedy, and so this was kind of a transitional time for civil rights and especially kind of the black community in Harlem and in New York. And so as you're watching these performances, there are a lot of interviews with musicians and performers and different people who were involved at the time, kind of reflecting on what was going on in the community and what was kind of being represented. On the one hand, you had Sly and the Family Stone, which is, a band that at the time was very groundbreaking, because it had male and female members, and not just female singers, but there was one of the female members of the band played the trumpet, and so not just because it wasn't just like your obligatory female backup singers. They were just like, the whole band was just fully integrated, and it was also integrated racially as well, because Sly was black, but the drummer was white. I think one of the horn players is white as well, and so it really was kind of this very symbolic production and unit. And so you kind of have that on the one hand, but then on the other hand, you had some of the artists who were a little bit more, kind of angry and kind of pushing back against, the different, racist attitudes and different things. And so it's kind of sobering, right? Because you see what's going on there, and of course you're obviously thinking about what's going on now and how those things compare. But then you kind of take a step back, and it's just like, wow, that really was just a really amazing portrait, for all of the high points, the low points, the incredible music. Just a real interesting watch. It's only about think it's only about an hour and a half. No, it's just shy of 2 hours. But well worth checking out for various reasons. The footage is really incredible. There's a lot of really up close and personal footage, and some great performances. At one point, Mavis Staples and Mahalia Jackson do a duet version of a gospel song called "Precious Lord, Take My Hand," which is really kind of a gospel standard, and just you really just get this incredible range, and of course, watching Stevie Wonder, you know, just kind of do his thing, and it may be kind of like in the same way that In the Heights connected to you personally. This is a kind of a music and an era that I've been listening to since I
You're
was a
that
little
old?
kid, and
No, I'm kidding.
no, no,
I knew it was gonna come up.
no, my parents raised me on
Yeah.
Motown
No, that's
and
so
a lot of
fun.
stuff,
So
and
not only is the
so
music incredible, but like kind of this time capsule of a very special time. Yeah.
very much so. Yeah, yeah. No, really, really an interesting watch. And so even if you're not a huge fan of that music, it's still just a real, like you say, just a great
Yeah.
time capsule. So, and that I believe is now streaming on Hulu and in theaters.
Sweet.
So it's out there ready for you
Awesome.
to check out. Lots of
Right?
newish stuff, which we haven't been able to say in a
Exactly.
while.
We gotta
So,
catch as much as we can now. Oh, it's funny you brought up Aretha Franklin during that, just mentioning all the different artists.
mhm.
Coincidentally, during In the Heights, during the trailer reel, there was a trailer for a new movie coming out about Aretha Franklin called Respect. Did you hear about this? Okay,
Right,
yeah.
right. I haven't
Okay.
heard much about it. I know that it's Jennifer
Oh
Hudson,
yeah.
right, is
And
playing Aretha
she
Franklin.
looks
Yeah,
fabulous in it. Like yeah, from the trailer, it looks like it's going to be really good, and kind of that same deal with like just the music and the experience. Experiencing the trailer in a movie theater and hearing that sound, it was pretty incredible. So a lot of fun stuff coming out in that genre.
it's nice to have some things to look forward
Absolutely.
to. That's for sure. Nice. Well, and hopefully more episodes to come of the Utah Film Pod will also be worth looking forward
Absolutely.
to. But thanks, Danny, and thanks for all of our listeners for spending some time with us. And I would preview what we're going to be talking about next time, but maybe keep an eye on utah.film, the website, because we'll post written articles and reviews and other material as well. Um, but until next time, Danny, do you have anything to sign off with? Any
No,
final
just
thoughts?
thank you for listening again. We'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah, for sure. And be excellent to each other. All right.
Take care.
Thanks for being here.